folks, today we're going to talk about the lap joint in the overhead position. So what we're going to do is we're going to get 5 pieces that are 6 inches long. We're going to tack them up on the ends here, not in the middle. We're going to tack them on the ends so we can get a nice weld the whole way. We're going to get 5 of those. We're going to get them all tacked up to where they're in the middle of the piece. This piece should be in the middle of the next piece. We're going to tack those up. Then you're going to need a handle. It could just be any piece of scrap. We're going to tack it up like that. So that way, when we go overhead, we can clamp it to our upright. Okay folks, so on overhead, you need to make sure you have all your PPE, your personal protective equipment that you're going to need to weld regularly, but you also want to make sure that you have everything secure. So, I recommend leather for overhead welding because we're going to be welding and those sparks are going to be dropping down on us. As you can see, sparks can burn holes in your coats. So I recommend leather. Any good quality leather coat is a good one to wear for overhead welding. Also, when you go and button everything up, you want to make sure that top button's all the way buttoned. And I actually like to pull my collar up. That way any sparks that are coming down are not going to find their way inside my clothes or get down my shirt and cause a problem. Also, when you weld, make sure that your gloves are on the outside of your sleeve. You don't want this undone to where any sparks could get down your coat. That's not going to feel pleasant. So make sure your coat's buttoned up. Make sure your glove is over your coat. And then when you put your mask on, make sure you have it nice and tight, and that way when you tip your head down, it's going to cover the top of your coat. Okay folks, so I got some tacking done, and as you can see, I have my lap joint set up to where I'm going to come in here and do it overhead. I have this piece tacked to it where it's going to be my handle. So I'm going to take my clamp and clamp it up where it's comfortable for me. A comfortable height for me. For me personally, this would be a comfortable height. If you want to do it way up here, that's fine, but just make sure you don't get it too high where arm fatigue is going to be an issue. So for me, I can get right in here, I can brace my arms off my chest, and I can just sit here and I can weld all day like this because my arms aren't going to get tired and start drooping down. So for me, it's a comfortable position right here. I'm going to go at a kind of a 55-degree angle, not necessarily a 45, but kind of a 55, so I get both pieces welded and have fusion on both pieces. Then I'm going to have my travel angle of 45, and I'm going to weld all of my lap joints. Now, little secret, if you tack things up and you produce a gap in between your pieces, that's going to be pretty tough to weld. What I would do if you tack things up and you have a gap in there, I would break that tack, maybe go to the plasma cutter, cut that off. You probably take it to the grinder and grind that tack off, get it flat, so that way you have a good solid base to start with and you're not trying to fight that gap in there. Alright? Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll run a couple passes on here. We'll produce a fillet weld on our lap joint in the overhead position. And again, like I said before, I would recommend leather. I would also recommend not standing right under it, because then all those sparks are going to come right down on you. You don't have to be right underneath it to do overhead. What you need to do is have your electrode underneath it, where you're welding on the bottom side of something. That's overhead. So we'll get set up, and we'll run a couple beads here. Okay, so we have one done. We'll go ahead and chip that off and check it out. Questions you might have: what is your welder set at? This one right now I have it set at 120. We're using the AC 225 Lincoln Electric welder, and on AC I'm using the 6013. You can also use 6011, 6010. One of those would be fine, but on your AC I have it running about 120. Okay. Also, another little tip or question, I guess you might ask, is whip and pause or circular? And I would say both. Try them both. See what works for you. See what is best for your welding style. All right, folks, so we'll take a look at the welds here. Bear in mind, I haven't overhead welded for a little while, so it's a little rough at the start. But it was sitting just like this, and so you can see the very first one I did, not so great. And this one I did on a circular pattern. This one would be the whip and pause. So I personally would probably continue doing the whip and pause. You can see I got a little hold there, so I went a little bit too far forward. The rest of this looks decent. On this one, I personally like the whip and pause, but again, it's up to you. It's whatever works best for you. Whatever gives you the best results, that's what I would recommend doing on this. But I would also practice them both so you're well versed in both types. All right, so there's your introduction to overhead welding in the lap joint, the fillet weld. And just remember not to stand right underneath it. Don't let those sparks drip right on you. You don't have to do that at all. All you have to do is make sure that electrode is underneath. All right,